I'm sure everyone remembers Carl Winslow, right? The dad from Family Matters, the guy with the picture-perfect life and family who was incessantly tormented by Steve Urkel? Well, I have some bad news for you because Carl Winslow never existed. Carl Winslow was the result of a man with a completely shattered mind and broken heart. A man who witnessed nightmarish terrors as his world nearly ended around him. A man who as a rookie cop took the life of an innocent teenager in the line of duty. A man who found himself deeply entrenched in saving the lives of hundreds of people and preventing a skyscraper from literally exploding. And it all started with a Twinkie. In the mid-1980s in New York City, a group of paranormal researchers had a meeting in a firehouse where they compared the amount of psychokinetic energy building up in New York City to a Twinkie.
According to this morning's sample, it would be a Twinkie 35 feet long, weighing approximately 600 pounds.
Not long after, those same men found themselves incarcerated in a New York City jail cell where they openly discussed the chaos unfolding around them in their city and inevitably brought up the concept and analogy of the Twinkie. And as it turns out, rookie police officer Al Powell was standing just feet outside of that cell and overheard everything that these men were talking about.
Okay, Ghostbusters. The mayor wants to see you guys. The whole island's going crazy. Let's go.
Hours later, Al Powell would find himself witnessing a literal nightmare as his world was about to end. And even though the Ghostbusters were inevitably triumphant at the end of the day, all the things Al Powell had witnessed had left him scarred for life. The realizations that ghosts, demons, and the afterlife were all real began taking an immediate toll on Al Powell, which is why he would slowly begin obsessively consuming Twinkies. Not long after these events, Officer Al Powell found himself working the beat on the New York City streets when he encountered a skinny teenage boy with large framed glasses carrying what he thought was a real firearm. After initially confronting the teenager, Al Powell would impulsively fire his gun, ultimately killing someone in the line of duty. Making matters worse, upon further investigation, the firearm that the teenager was carrying was discovered to be an elaborate fake that he had constructed himself, which had just won first prize at a local science fair. The guilt Al Powell felt after this incident was unimaginable, and he began suffering nightmares where he was tormented by this teenage boy as he slept. The next time we encountered Al Powell was when he was purchasing an obscene amount of Twinkies and blaming it on the fact that he had a pregnant wife at home, even though we do not see a wedding band on his finger at this point in time, which indicated Al Powell's descent into madness had begun with this obsessive consumption of mass quantities of Twinkies. You see, at this point, Al Powell had moved all the way across the country, from New York City to Los Angeles in hopes of a new start, but what he was about to experience was going to plunge him deep into madness to the point that no one could ever reach him again. Through a random sequence of events, Al Powell found himself on the front lines of the events taking place at Nakatomi Plaza, where not only hundreds of lives were at stake, but a skyscraper was about to be blown to pieces. And even though a hero cop from New York City would eventually save the day, these events would only compound the trauma that Al Powell had experienced to this point, while at the same time the guilt he felt from taking the life of an innocent teenager as a rookie officer had already begun to consume him completely. This would all result in Al Powell eventually creating a fantasy world and a new identity for himself, a man named Carl Winslow. Not only was Carl Winslow everything that Al Powell wasn't, he also had everything that Al Powell didn't. Carl Winslow had a perfect life and a perfect family, and no matter what happened at the end of the day, everything was going to be okay. However, there was just one problem with Al Powell's perfect world. His guilt had begun to manifest itself in the form of the teenage boy he had slain years earlier as a rookie officer. And this guilt manifested itself as Steve Urkel. Steve Urkel was a near constant nuisance in Carl Winslow's perfect world, whose never-ending schemes and chaos would destroy Carl Winslow's perfect life on a nearly daily basis. Eventually, the constant turmoil caused by the guilt manifested as Steve Urkel got to the point that it gave Carl Winslow a heart attack, nearly killing him. In the end, there was never a Carl Winslow, a man with a perfect life, a perfect wife, and a perfect family, where at the end of the day, everything was going to be okay. There was only Al Powell, a man with a shattered mind, broken spirit, and disastrously unhealthy Twinkie addiction, doomed to suffer alone with only his unrelenting guilt to keep him company.
You know, when you're a rookie, they can teach you everything about being a cop except how to live with a mistake.
Hi, Mr. Winslow. I'm Steve Urkel.
Nice flowers.
Yeah, thanks. On the way over, I stopped by the cemetery.
What have I done?